Politico. And Phelim, thanks for joining us on a very busy day, to be sure. You're looking at this not only in the context of these two nations coming together after a lot of tensions over the years, but the impact that it will have on the U.S., the world, and China in particular. So welcome back to the show, and kind of give us your overview and what you expect to hear coming out of these conversations at Camp David.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I mean, I think we can look today as being President Joe Biden's, capstone of 2 to 3 years of really dogged diplomatic efforts to build regional Asian nations around this idea of support for what he calls the rules-based international order, which is code for essentially countering China's growing influence and increasing bellicosity in the Indo-Pacific region. And this is particularly pertinent here because what Biden has been able to do is he's been able to bring together Japan and Korea, who are traditionally extremely rancorous, and the acrimony between these two countries runs back more than a century. And the fact that he's able to get them in the same room, on the same podium, this is hugely symbolic. And to shake hands and say, we're going to work together because we recognize that our neighborhood, specifically North Korea and its increasingly threatening missile program, and China's apparent regional designs to expand its influence, are a threat to us and our way of life. And that's something that is really remarkable.
Yeah, it is remarkable, and I'm so appreciative of the way you frame that, Phelim. People can disagree with the president on all kinds of different policy and this, that, and the other. But this is one of those things that was a big bite and a long chew. And the president stuck with it. And I think, again, I don't think people realize just how rancorous that relationship, having lived in Japan for 2 years, I felt it. I saw that tension between South Korea and Japan. And this is a historic moment. We're actually watching on the screen now as the leaders are getting ready to move towards that podium. And so I appreciate you calling that out for what it is. I think it is an important day. I think it's important for the president. I think it's important for the country. And so give us some of the kind of the backstory there in terms of what specifics, if any, we hope to be getting as they get ready to step to the podium.
Yeah, so the administration has been leaking over the last few days some of the highlights of what's going to emerge from this, from this summit. And the top lines are: there's going to be cooperation in terms of real-time sharing of sensing of North Korean missile tests. There's going to be the development of a new and improved hotline that links the three capitals, Washington, D.C., Seoul in South Korea, and Tokyo in Japan. And there's going to be a laundry list of other details related to things like technological cooperation, even issues related to climate change, cooperation on technological advances. So, this is going to lay out to a certain extent, it's going to be pretty general. But what Biden and President Yoon of South Korea and Prime Minister Kishida of Japan are trying to do is they're trying to set the infrastructure for a relationship that can survive potential instability in the future. And by that, I mean, President Yoon particularly has taken a lot of political risks in drawing closer, aligning with Japan. Now, President Yoon is not going to be president of South Korea forever. So they're trying to build this infrastructure that can survive a potential political turn in fortune in either the U.S. or in Japan or in South Korea. So it's built in, baked in, and this will continue. And that's really important for sending signals to North Korea, to Pyongyang, and also to Beijing that this alliance is here to stay, and they have to contend with it.
Yeah, that infrastructure, that scaffolding and the inner parts of that can survive changes of administration is so critical. We've seen such swings in a lot of the foreign affairs where one presidency or one administration goes one way, the other goes elsewhere, and everything kind of goes back to ground zero. And again, facing North Korea, China in particular, I think the infrastructure component to this relationship between Japan, the U.S., and Korea is so significant. I wanted to get to one other thing with you, Phelim, and that is We looked at things like the Quad, the U.S., Japan, Australia, and India, important. Give us some context in terms of how important this is. We've been looking back this week at the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and a lot of people wondering, will the U.S. really be there for us when it matters? Is this part of that ongoing effort from the administration to really demonstrate, especially in that region of the world, that, hey, we're going to be here, we're going to be with you for the long haul?
Yeah, I mean, you just referenced something that is so pertinent to foreign countries' interactions with the Biden administration. 2 years ago, we had that horrific Kabul moment, when Afghanistan essentially collapsed. And the U.S. looked like it was this wounded, retreating behemoth. And of course, Beijing made hay of this in terms of trying to point out that this was a declining power, that China was the future. And I think what we've seen in 2 years, when you look at the fact, you mentioned this idea of the Quad, putting together those four countries in this regional alliance. It's not military, but a really important political, economic, and diplomatic grouping. We also have AUKUS, which links the UK, the US, and Australia in a regional defense pact. And now we have South Korea and Japan, again, these traditional non-friendly nations that have huge economies, that have huge industrial output, and have large military industrial complexes that are really essential for the challenges of this 21st century. And in terms of things that are going to be on the table, you can bet that Ukraine is going to come up or has come up in these discussions in terms of trying to bring those two now close allies into closer alignment with the U.S. in terms of ensuring that Ukraine's defense can persist, that it gets the materials that it needs. And we might not see black and white sort of outcomes on that right away today, but I think that's something that we're going to see work through the system over the coming months.
Yeah, and then just final question for you before I let you go. We're just watching the scene. It's such a big scene. We're watching the president and the two leaders begin to work their way through the trees there along the path at Camp David. Just give us a 30-second, Phelim, in terms of what's something else that you're watching for that might be a little under the radar that we might hear today.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you something really quickly. We had a briefing late last night by a senior Japanese foreign ministry official who said that even as late as last night, 10, 11 p.m., negotiators from South Korea, Japan, and the U.S., senior diplomats were still wrangling over whether the word China should be in these texts, whether the three countries should explicitly align, China and North Korea as explicit threats to stability and peace in the Indo-Pacific. So I'm watching to see, are we going to see China, or are we just going to see references to other countries in the region? And the fact is, the reason they do that is there are concerns, of course, that South Korea is particularly vulnerable to Chinese economic coercion and economic punishment. So if it crosses Beijing, they may literally pay a price.
Oh. Fantastic insight. Nobody better. Phelim Kine, D.C.-based China correspondent for Politico. Phelim, thanks for joining us on an important day. And we are now ready to go to the President of the United States, standing at Camp David, flanked by the leaders of South Korea and Japan. This is an important conversation, so let's go right to it at Camp David.
Personal privilege. I want to start by expressing my appreciation for the contribution that your countries have made toward the relief following the devastating wildfires in Hawaii. I want to thank you both on behalf of the American people. I also want to note that my team is closely monitoring Hurricane Hilary, which has the potential to bring significant rain and flooding to Southern California. FEMA has pre-positioned personnel and supplies in the region, and they're ready to respond as needed. I urge everyone in the path of this storm to take precautions and listen to the guidance from state and local officials. And you've heard me say it before, the Republic of Korea and Japan are capable and indispensable allies. Now to the purpose of why we're here. America's commitment to both countries is ironclad, and my personal commitment to bringing these three nations together was real from the very beginning. Since last summer, we've met on the margins of the NATO summit in Spain, the ASEAN summit in Cambodia, and the G7 summit in Japan. Today, we've made history with the first ever standalone summit between the leaders of our three countries, as well as our commitment to meet together on the leader level annually and to have all our relative cabinet member people meet on a regular basis from this point on. Not just this year, not next year, forever. That's the intention. And so I want to recognize the important work that both of you have done and the political courage, and I mean this sincerely, the political courage that you both demonstrated to resolve difficult issues that have stood in the way for a long time of a close relationship between Japan and Korea and with the United States. Your leadership, with the full support of the United States, has brought us here because each of you understands that our world stands at an inflection point, a point where we're called to lead in new ways, to work together, to stand together. And today I'm proud to say our nations are answering that call. First, we're elevating our trilateral defense collaboration to deliver an Indo-Pacific region that includes launching annual multi-domain military exercises, bringing our trilateral defense cooperation to unprecedented levels. We're doubling down on information sharing, including on the DPRK's missile launches and cyber activities, strengthening our ballistic missile defense cooperation, and critically, we've all committed to swiftly consult with each other in response to threats to any one of our countries from whatever source it occurs. That means we'll have a hotline to share information and coordinate our responses whenever there is a crisis in the region or affecting any one of our countries. And today, we've all reaffirmed our shared commitment to maintaining peace and stability in the Taiwan Straits and addressing economic coercion. We're going to continue to counter threats from the DPRK, including cryptocurrency money laundering to the tune of billions of dollars, potential arms transfer in support of Russia's brutal war against Ukraine. And together, we're going to stand up for international law, freedom of navigation, and the peaceful resolution of disputes in the South China Sea. Second, we're expanding our economic cooperation to build an Indo-Pacific that is peaceful and prosperous. Today, we've committed to launch a new, what we call a supply chain early warning system, a supply chain early warning system pilot, and which will alert our nations to disruptions of certain products and materials like critical minerals or batteries, so we can get ahead of the issues as they appear with the experience that we've experienced during the pandemic. Excuse me, this is falling off. There you go. And
we've been listening to President Joe Biden at Camp David, flanked by the leaders of Japan and South Korea. An important meeting there. First time they've had these trilateral meetings, and not as part of another meeting, kind of a sideline meeting at other events around the world. And they want this to be an ongoing thing. That's an important signal to North Korea and to China, and I think to the rest of the world as well. We're going to go ahead and step aside for a quick break. When we come back, we'll recap, and then we'll continue to march forward on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Stick around.
BYU's Big 12 season can start soon enough.
He's going to go 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown!
This Monday, join us for the premiere of Cougar Nation. Cougar Nation. BYU insider Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte look ahead to opening day. They analyze the new, bigger Big 12. And they take your calls, BYU fans. That's this Monday night, 6 to 7. Cougar Nation. Cougar Nation. On KSL News Radio.
At Fisher Investments, our clients know we have their backs.
How do your clients know that?
Because Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, the highest standard for a financial advisor. It means we're there for our clients and always put their interests first.
So wait, you do it because you have to?
No, We do it because it's the right thing to do. Our clients trust us with their retirement savings, and we know how important that responsibility is. So we take the time to really get to know them.
Get to know them how?
We make sure we understand their unique goals, finances, health, family, and lifestyle so we can tailor their portfolio to their specific needs. Our goal is to help them achieve a comfortable retirement.
Sounds like a big responsibility. You must make big commissions then, right?
No, we don't sell commission-based products. We have one single transparent fee that's structured so we do better when our clients do better. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you are switching to us. Fisher Investments, clearly different money management.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Imagine how inconvenient your life would be without power. No lights, no refrigeration, no heating or cooling, and no electronics. But with a Generac home standby generator, you'll have the power when you need it most. Generac generators automatically provide backup after sensing a power outage, so your life goes on uninterrupted. Schedule a free quote today with Genco Generators, your elite Generac service dealer in Utah. Call 801-296-5922 or online at gencogenerators.net.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, we could see more cloudbursts and flooding in Utah's national parks this afternoon, as well as on the Wasatch Front. Second, the Rock and Roll Half Marathon means street closures on the east side of Salt Lake City tomorrow. And third, President Biden brought the top leaders of South Korea and Japan to Camp David for a three-way summit meeting. Right now, 88 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Well, the Biden administration is giving more border relief money to New York than to Arizona. That might seem and sound a bit odd considering New York is not a border state. Arizona clearly is. So why the disproportionate share of funds? Is this politics at its worst? Is this the kind of policy we should be going after? Really pleased to have joining us on the program today, Allie Bradley, news correspondent for News Nation, covering the border. And Allie, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So give us the breakdown on this. This was one of those head-scratcher kind of think again moments of, wait a minute, New York's getting more money? Break it down for us.
Yeah, and that's why Arizona's independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema is frustrated because she actually worked with Texas Senator Cornyn behind the scenes for months back in December to get this $800 million bill pushed forward through Congress that they anticipated to be earmarked for border communities, people on the front lines of the border crisis, right? They've been talking about it for years, that they need help, that they are not getting enough help. So what the state of Arizona is getting is very disproportionate compared to New York. We're looking at about $69 million for Arizona, which of course is a border state, right? We know that hundreds of people enter into the state of Arizona every single day. Well, when you look at what New York is getting, New York is actually getting $134 million in funding when all is said and done. That's nearly double what Arizona is getting. So, yeah, Kyrsten Sinema is saying she is livid. She is adamant to get more money for the state of Arizona, but she is finger pointing, saying that New York is getting this preferential treatment because high-profile lawmakers like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries live in New York. So she's saying that is the reason why they're getting the funding. But to be frank here, the reality is a lot of people that cross into these border states don't stay in the border communities that they're crossing into. They're oftentimes picked up by Border Patrol, transported over to an NGO, and then that NGO transports them to wherever they're going. Most of them are going to New York. And so the reality is a lot of them aren't staying here, and a lot of the federal funding is going to the NGOs because the communities aren't that dramatically impacted, like New York, saying they're going to spend $5 billion this year if something doesn't change, right? But then you look at Yuma, and Yuma is still sitting on their regional hospital that is a nonprofit. It's sitting on $26 million in uncompensated care that they've provided to migrants. So the state does need money. The state is also looking at, in Yuma County, a 20% increase in migrants seeking residency there so that they can benefit from the food bank. So they are absolutely being impacted. But now, are they being impacted at a magnitude that New York is? Arizona is going to have to provide and produce some numbers if they want to get more funding, right? They're going to have to be able to prove that they're spending, as much as New York, that it's costing their state $5 billion and things like that. And honestly, you guys, I don't know if they're going to have the numbers to prove that because, again, most migrants leave the states that they cross into. Now, if you go into Texas, the story's a little bit different there.
Right.
Some people do go up to Houston, and there are more migrants that live in Dallas in that area. But there also is no real way to check where the migrants are staying because they don't have a census. The reason why New York knows how many people are showing up is because they've got buses showing up and they're counting them as they're getting off the buses, right?
Yeah.
So they know how many people are there. Whereas in Texas and Arizona, it's kind of profiling to go around a door knock and ask people if they're a migrant living there. So it's a little bit difficult to track these people and where they're living and how much money is being spent on their care.
Yeah, wow. There's so many pieces of that to unpack in terms of one, you have the kind of the politics of it, and even if nothing else, the visuals are horrible. That you have the the leader in the House and the leader in the Senate, and it's going there. So, and I'm with you. If that's what it is and that's what it needs to be, then that's fine. I don't have a problem with it as long as we have transparency and accountability are the key pieces. But I love the fact that
here's the other thing.
Oh,
you know, the mayors in these big cities have been pointing the finger at Governor Abbott for what they call a political stunt, right? We've all been watching this and busing people around the country. But here's the thing. I have spent a lot of time down at the southern border. I am there every single week. I'm talking to migrants on a daily basis. And the vast majority, I'm going to throw out a 90% number because that's how confident I am in that number, that these individuals I'm talking to, before they've even interacted with Border Patrol or an NGO that would have any kind of influence on them, they're going to Nueva York. They're going to New York because that's where the resources are. That's where their families are. That's where they know somebody that went. So that's where they're going. It's not like Abbott is kidnapping these people and moving them up there. I mean, they're signing a waiver. But again, if you go on these NGOs' websites, they're posting about how grateful they are for the free bus ride up to New York.
Yeah.
You know, so New York has got a problem that they kind of created on their own, being a sanctuary city. Right now, they have to deal with it, and they want federal funding.
They want the federal money. Yeah.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
Exactly.
Great insight.
Yep.
Allie Bradley's news correspondent for News Nation, covering the border down there in the trenches, understanding what's going on, how it's going on. Great insight and a lot to think about beyond just the headlines. That's why it's so critical we get beyond the headlines in all of these. Allie, thanks for jumping on with us today.
No problem. Take care, guys. Have a good weekend.
All right. Again, Allie Bradley, news correspondent for News Nation, covering the border. And so let me back up a little bit in terms of what Allie said there. There's some really important nuances to that again, often don't get caught in the political battles that are always in the headlines. And so are there a lot going to New York? Yes, absolutely. Why are they going there? Some it's family, some it's a sanctuary city, so it makes it easier for them to get settled and to get moving along. And so a lot of things are happening. Now, should the federal government be sending the money there? What's happening down in Arizona? Is the money being spent there? There's a lot in terms of health care, in terms of what places like Yuma, the hospital there, have provided in services but haven't been compensated from the federal government. That seems to be a little sideways to me. And so this is just one of those things where you have to get underneath the headline to really get to the nuance of everything that's going on. And you can say, okay, there's some justification for some things happening with New York, but there's a whole lot of things going on in Texas and in Arizona that need to be taken care of. And, of course, all of it goes to the heart and soul of the issue in terms of the border, entry, exit, and a very broken system. But I have to tell you, the answer to all of that is not to just throw money at it and then let lawmakers decide who gets it and who doesn't. All right, we're going to step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. When we come back, more Inside Sources. We'll take a look at Ukraine, what's happening, and how do we get to really the winning strategy in Ukraine. We'll talk about that coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Utah's job market grew at an annual rate of 3% in July. The Department of Workforce Services Deputy Director Nate McDonald tells Utah's Morning News the number of people working a second job has also been going up.
Seeing more and more people do it. And really one of the other telling stories about this, we've been talking about this last couple of months, is, again, we saw our labor force participation rate increase again. We're at a 14-year high.
Utah's unemployment rate stayed steady last month at 2.4%. We'll have a marathon race or a half marathon going on in downtown Salt Lake tomorrow. Be prepared for road closures with that. KSL News Radio's Randall Jepson has more.
Road closures will start even before the race begins at Library Square at 7 a.m., and police tell us the road closures could be lengthy. Runners will be passing the state capitol, the U of U campus, 9th and 9th. They'll even take a lap around Liberty Park before heading back to Library Square.
And a top national story this hour from ABC News. The Southwest and California bracing for Hurricane Hilary, now a Category 4 storm. Coachella Valley and Palm Springs now under a tropical storm watch. Shane Reichert is spokesperson for Riverside County's emergency management. He tells ABC News he's working to make sure Riverside is best prepared for what Hilary could dish out.
We're working with a lot of different agencies to make sure that we're prepared for it, even this far in advance where we don't know exactly where we might see those impacts.
And Hilary could affect some of our weather happening here in Utah as well. Taking a look at your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down just a bit, just 5 points on the day right now. The NASDAQ is down 26 points. And our KSL weather, again, we could see some additional flash flooding in southern Utah and even in the northern part of the state this afternoon. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
Do you find yourself stuck in a timeshare? Get the real facts about the timeshare industry and your options for cancellation. Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group, has put together a free information guide that reveals the secrets the timeshare industry doesn't want you to know, including the 5 ways to get rid of your timeshare. Call now and get this timeshare cancellation guide absolutely free.
Call 800-330-2929. That's 800-330-2929. 800-330-2929.
When words come out of our mouths and everything sounds fine, no one bats an eye. But if things come out a little jumbled or letters sound different than most, there's speech therapy. But did you know that speech therapy is used for more than just stuttering or dysfluency? From articulation to expressive and receptive language to a simple act of swallowing that most of us take for granted, speech therapy can do amazing things for you, your health, and of course your sense of self. That's why Summit Speech Therapy is here. Summit Speech Therapy works with people of all ages, from infants and toddlers who have a difficult time feeding or eating, TBI, stroke, or coma patients, to children and adults with speech problems. So much of it is all related, and Summit Speech Therapy can help. Summit works with all insurance companies as well as private pay options, and the experience can be life-changing. With clinics up and down the Wasatch Front, including Murray, with no long waiting for an appointment. For more, visit summitslp.com. That's summitslp.com.
When you choose Performance Automotive in Bountiful, you're choosing selection, convenience, and exceptional service. 4 locations: Performance Ford Lincoln, Performance Honda, Performance Toyota, and Ford Truck Country. All dedicated to delivering you the best auto experience anywhere. Looking for your first car? Maybe you want rugged power or the stylish ride of your dreams. New or used. See it all at PerformanceBountiful.com. PerformanceBountiful.com.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
The accident on the transition ramp from westbound I-80 to go northbound on I-215's West Belt has been cleared. We're back to a crash-free and delay-free drive. This is the Place Heritage Park, the place to learn, explore, and enjoy Utah history. Perfect for weddings, reunions, birthdays, celebrations of life, and more. Plan today at thisistheplace.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we could see more thunderstorms across the state from north to south again today. Some could bring heavy rain and possible flash flooding. The storm chances continue through the weekend. Today's high 95 with highs in the lower 90s through Monday. We're at 90 degrees right now under partly cloudy skies at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
We're really thrilled to have back on the program with us today retired Army Colonel Jonathan Sweet. Served 30 years as a military intelligence officer, including tours of duty with the 101st Airborne Division and the Intelligence and Security Command. He led the U.S. European Command Intelligence Engagement Division from 2012 to 2014. And Jonathan, welcome back to the program. We thank you as always for your service. You and your tag team partner, Mark Toth, who we always look to for great insight, have another wonderful piece in The Hill talking about how Washington is forcing a losing strategy when it comes to Ukraine. Describe that for us.
Well, first, thanks for having me back on the show. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about what's going on in Ukraine. The strategy right now is not a winning strategy, at least from our perspective. It's not a winning strategy. It's been a strategy from the beginning to weaken Russia. It's been a strategy to help Ukraine defend itself against Russian aggression, and has been, to that perspective, it's been very successful. And I'm sure Ukraine has no issues with the amount of support that's been given to them to do that. But as you know, in June of last year, with the counteroffensive in the Kharkiv area and the introduction of HIMARS, momentum shifted, and it shifted into the Ukrainians' favor, and they were able to begin to start to push back on Russian aggression. And to date, the weapons that they need now to finish the deal, to close the deal, they're simply not receiving, and that involves precision, deep strike capability. Which could be from ATACMS, close air support, possibly from F-16s, engineering assets, particularly to overcome or to defeat the obstacles, particularly the minefields. Those type of assets that they need to be able to both interdict Russian forces that have not arrived on the battlefield yet, and then also to engage in the close fight. So there's a lot of talk about the cluster munitions and how they've been successful, and they have. They've been successful in the close fight. They've been successful in getting the Russians out of the trenches and eliminating the threats, but it's not addressing the deep fight. And right now, Ukraine needs the ability to address the deep fight while they're fighting the close fight to affect an ability to break through and then further exploit that situation.
Yeah, and so let's dig into that just a little bit, because I think there are some important things for all of us to understand in this process. One, it seems, and you pointed this out in your piece, that the instinct of the Biden administration, one, has been to really tiptoe into this very cautiously, kind of with that overarching thing. Well, if we can slow it down, if we can weaken Russia in the process, but not really about being on that front foot. It's sort of the de-escalate at any cost kind of mentality of we don't want to pick a fight with Vladimir Putin ourselves. And so we're always seeming to ratchet things down or be very slow at this kind of trickle supply in terms of what Ukraine needs, which I think, to your point, has prevented Ukraine from getting out of the defensive crouch and really being on the offensive, which is what they'll ultimately have to do if they're going to expel Russia from their sovereign territory.
I agree. It really comes down to the ability to affect Russia's ability to wage war. And look, there's really two fights here. I mean, actually, there's three. There's the close, there's the deep, and then there's the fight, the terroristic attacks of the Putin administration against Ukrainian civilians. So you really have those three dynamics going on. And getting air defense assets into Ukraine has been superb. Look, the platforms that are there, the Patriot and the other assets there, they're doing great jobs against hypersonic missiles. They're doing wonderful jobs against other types of activity that's coming into the theater. But the problem is all they're doing is shooting down the missile in flight. And interdicting the missile is one thing, but having the ability to destroy the missile platform from where it's being fired from will impact Russia's ability to continue to fire. $43 billion has been invested into this fight right now. At least that, as of, I believe, 25 July was the memo from the State Department or the Department of Defense that said how much money that they invested. But one Patriot missile, if I'm not mistaken, will cost $3 million. Okay. One hypersonic missile from Russia. So again, 10 hypersonic missiles have been fired in the past 2 weeks. And if they've been shot down, I believe most of them have been shot down. That's $30 million in Patriot missiles. And that's if all the missiles acquire their targets. And tomorrow they'll fire more missiles.
Right.
So they're doing a great job interdicting the missiles. Don't get me wrong. They're in the 80s and the 90s percentile wise, but they're not affecting Russia's ability to continue firing those missiles. And that's when we talk interdiction.
Yeah.
That's when we're talking defeating their ability to wage war and striking those launch points, but also striking those points on the Russian side of the border where the Russian troops are staging, where they're staging troops, where they're staging equipment, where they're staging ammunition, where their headquarters elements are. Right now, those are all off limits to U.S. weapon systems.
Yeah.
Those are off limits and they can't strike them. So in a sense, they're forced to wait for them to come across the border before they can hit them. And that's putting them on the defensive. They can't fight the deep fight. They can only fight the close fight. And because of that, it's prolonging the war, and you're seeing more and more civilians that are getting killed because of the airstrikes.
Yeah, that's such an important point, that if Ukraine can't go to where they're staging and where they're keeping all of their assets and their soldiers, then it's a very different kind of battle. And as you said, it will just continue to be protracted. Now, we do know that late yesterday, that the Biden administration did approve, after the training of some of those Ukrainian pilots on F-16s, that there has been an approval for some of those F-16s coming from Denmark to change it. How will that change the dynamic as that begins to move forward and actually becomes operationalized?
Yeah, well, it won't change the dynamic in the next 8 to 12 months, though. And that's key. So the fight, it's going to affect today's fight. It will affect the fight if the fight continues to get pushed to the right. If it gets out to 2024 and 2025, that close air support will help.
Yeah.
Okay. It will provide, an additional tool to a combined arms effort. That one platform by itself doesn't change anything, but as part of a team, it affects the ability for Ukraine to create the conditions for the close fight to be successful by hitting targets a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So it will have an impact. Now, the other thing that's missing out is one thing to train the pilot, but it's also another thing to train the crews that maintain that weapon system. Okay. So while we're seeing all the discussion about we're going to train pilots, and then once they're trained, we're going to give them the aircraft, what I haven't seen, at least from the U.S. side, I think I saw in a plan that Denmark had, that it would take 6 months to train the crews. But there needs to be that plan. And then, oh, by the way, there are some restrictions, if you will, about runway length and where you're going to put that asset and how you're going to defend that asset once you introduce it to the theater. Things that maybe could have been thought about 6 to 12 months ago that we're having to be forced to think about now while they're fighting a counteroffensive. Now, the other piece, and we talked about this earlier, is the ATACMS.
Yeah.
And they still have to release authorities for the ATACMS. And there's a number of reasons why they say. One is that they don't have enough munitions. Two is that they already have contracts with other countries, but they could release the authority to 2 NATO partners who are very close to Ukraine, Poland and Romania, to release their ATACMS systems so that they can be used. Again, it's not the answer to the equation. It's part of the solution to being able to do deep fires. And oh, by the way, the ATACMS is on a mobile platform fired by HIMARS, correct? So it's not attached to an airframe loitered in the air waiting for a target to be presented. Rather, it can be maneuvered on the battlefield, get to a point, fire, and then maneuver back.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of moving pieces and parts, but our whole point to the article is that it's still defense. It's still defense. And it's wonderful that they're providing all that. And Ukraine loves it, but they're not going to win a war by fighting the same fight over and over and over, because they clear a trench line, they advance 10 yards. The Russians come in, they put more people in trenches, they seed more mines, and all this is happening from behind the Russian lines, and they just keep coming across.
Yeah.
And they'll pick new battlefields. If they're losing here, they'll move there.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating.
Yeah, and to me, that's the whole thing, is we can continue to have this defensive battle, but really that is just the slow slog, and not a lot moves other than it just kind of changes positioning here and there. And we got to change the dynamic if Ukraine is really going to be the one to win this. And be able to get to those deep strikes, not just that what's right in front of you kind of stuff. So great insight, great perspective, as always, retired Army Colonel Jonathan Sweet. Great piece with Mark Toth in The Hill, and why we've got to change the dynamic. We got to get away from this strategy that ultimately ends up being a stalemate/losing strategy, as opposed to being out front where Ukraine can actually win and maintain their sovereign country. And Jonathan, as always, thanks so much for your perspective.
Hey, thank you for having me back on.
Wonderful stuff there. Important things to be working our way through. We're continuing to monitor the press conference with President Biden and the leaders of South Korea and Japan at Camp David. Some very historic things happening there and being announced. And it's the beginning of that, but very important. We'll step aside for some quick news. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio.
The recovery and rebuild will take a generation.
The fire was moving at a mile a minute.
We ran out of the house. I'm lucky to be alive. Destruction of Lahaina. There is very little left there.
Maui Strong, you're seeing it in full display as people are coming out of the woodworks to serve, to help.
During these times, Utahns pull together to help friends and communities in need. Please join us by donating to the disaster relief right at our website. Look for Maui Strong at KSLNewsRadio.com.
From Audra McDonald to Mozart, from ABBA to Frank Zappa, there's something for you at Utah Symphony and Utah Opera. Feel the grandeur of classical masterworks with a world-class orchestra. Experience adventure and romance with stunning operas and films screened with live music. Hear the best voices in the business sing pop hits. And make memories with the kids at whimsical family concerts. All shows have just gone on sale at the best prices you'll see this year. Get tickets for your favorites at usuo.org. New to the symphony and opera, performances trending now include Black Panther in Concert, Dvorak's wildly popular New World Symphony, an unforgettable collaboration with singer and actress Audra McDonald, and the heartbreaking love story La Boheme. The super low prices for these high-demand shows won't last long, so secure great seats for extraordinary live music experiences now at usuo.org.
At Fisher Investments, we do things differently, and other money managers don't understand why.
Because our way works great for us.
But it may not work for your clients. That's why Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, obligated to put clients first. It's the highest standard for a financial advisor.
So, what do you provide? Cookie-cutter portfolios like the rest of us?
No cookie-cutter portfolios here. Fisher Investments tailors portfolios to meet each client's goals and needs.
But you do sell investments that earn you high commissions, right? And make commissions when you make trades for your clients?
No, Fisher Investments doesn't sell any commission investment products, and we never earn commissions on trades.
So what's in it for you?
Fisher Investments fees are structured so we do better when our clients do better. When it comes to helping clients achieve a comfortable retirement, we're clearly different. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments, clearly different money management.
Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
Quality, speed, value for your money, and $1,000 off any roof replacement. That's the IWC advantage. IWC, Intermountain West Contractors, delivers on the things most important to you when it comes time to replace your roof. There could be a dozen different reasons why your roof needs replacement, but just one answer to the problem: IWC. With IWC, you get quality because roof replacement is their specialty, and each job comes complete with the best warranties from the most trusted roofing material manufacturer in America. You get speed because IWC understands your time is valuable. In most cases, they can replace an entire roof in just one day. And with IWC, there's the value of knowing they use top-tier quality materials in every installation and deliver it all at an affordable price. And now, for a limited time, save $1,000 on a roof replacement project. Visit IWCroofing.com or call 801-232-5690. That's 801-232-5690.
Imagine how inconvenient your life would be without power. No lights, no refrigeration, no heating or cooling, and no electronics. But with a Generac home standby generator, you'll have the power when you need it most. Generac generators automatically provide backup after sensing a power outage, so your life goes on uninterrupted. Schedule a free quote today with Genco Generators, your elite Generac service dealer in Utah. Call 801-296-5922 or online at gencogenerators.net.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at KSLNewsRadio.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Utah was still seeing strong job growth and a low unemployment rate in July. Second, the worker who was killed in an industrial accident in Clearfield has now been identified. And third, inland areas of California getting ready as Hurricane Hillary approaches the Pacific coast. Right now, 90 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources, an inside look at 2024 presidential politics.
Well, it's once again time for our weekly segment of the show where we do a little deeper dive into 2024 presidential politics, looking at the inside of the inside when it comes to the race for 2024. And as we look at the candidates, coming up on some very important dates, including a critical debate for the Republican candidates for presidency. They will be having a debate in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on Tuesday. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But that's an important date. And then as you look at the Democratic side of the aisle, also a very important week for the president and his reelection bid. And you may say, well, wait a minute, he's not really doing lots of big events. And he did a little bit this week. He spoke a lot this week, obviously, on the Inflation Reduction Act, celebrating the one-year anniversary. And so while that was more governing, we call that the Rose Garden strategy. So he's talking about things that he's done from a policy standpoint, but it looks good on the political map as well. And that's what he's trying to do. So I thought the messaging around the Inflation Reduction Act was a little tough. It was a little bit of a struggle. I don't think they all really landed for the president. So I don't think that was especially a win politically during the course of the week. I actually think the biggest political win for President Biden this week is actually happening right now as we speak. As you look at having President Yoon and President Kishida of Japan and South Korea, respectively, at Camp David. These are two countries in South Korea and Japan who have been bitter rivals and enemies is not quite the right word, but it's pretty doggone close in terms of the attitudes there. And so getting both of them to Camp David to have historic talks, historic agreements in terms of things they will do together, including a focus on cancer research. Really interesting. So there's a host of things coming out of that. We're going to continue to monitor that. We'll come back to it at the end of the show coming up at 2:50. We'll talk about some of the things coming out of this important summit at Camp David. I actually think this is the biggest win for the president all week. Not a lot of people are paying attention to it, but this is historic, and this actually demonstrates governing and leadership. The president has done a lot of behind-the-scenes work to make this day happen, and it has happened, and I commend the president for it. I think it's important. I can disagree with the president on a lot of things, but this is not one of them. This is something that is important to everybody, regardless of political persuasion. So I actually think that's a political win for the president in the end. Let's jump over to the Republican side now. And, of course, we always say in this segment of the show that trying to understand the behavior of some of the candidates for president is like trying to smell the color 7. It's complicated. And watching what some of the campaigns are doing and not doing, the ebbs and flows of a campaign, you get a lot of head-scratcher moments. And this last week in particular was, of course, Iowa State Fair week. And so you could see all of the candidates doing everything from flipping burgers to eating pork chops, something fried on a stick, looking at buttered cows, and all the things that happen at the Iowa State Fair. But there were also some important moments, I think, in terms of conversations. And so we'll look at those. And now moving forward, there's more going on. And someone who's kind of having one of those ascendancy kinds of moments is Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. A lot of people talking about his rise. A lot of donors are starting to rethink and looking towards Senator Scott as a potential person to get behind. And many of the Republican candidates are in Atlanta, Georgia today at a conservative conference there. Each of them were interviewed by talk show host Eric Erickson. Talked about their policy platforms because Eric actually likes to get to policy conversations. Tim Scott spoke about a unique strategy to break up the bureaucracy and I think a lot of the influence of lobbyists in Washington, D.C. Take a listen.
And then we need to break up the bureaucracy in Washington. Literally, there's some agencies that we may have a conversation about eliminating, but we should take the bureaucracy and send it around the country. Why not take the energy department and send it to Tennessee? Why does it have to be housed in Washington? I think if we were to break the Potomac fever, I literally think we would have a smaller, less intrusive government if everything wasn't concentrated in Washington and then insulated. When 6 out of the 10 wealthiest counties in the country are surrounding Washington, D.C., it means the rest of the country is paying the price for having those counties have that kind of wealth because of the concentration of power and resources and the decision making.
You've heard me criticize that before. 6 out of the 10 wealthiest counties in America are suburbs of Washington, D.C. Why? It's not because they make things. It's not about computer chips or cars or anything else. It's power, money, and influence peddling. And so there's a lot of money flowing in and out of there. And so Senator Scott's saying, hey, let's move these agencies out of Washington, D.C. There's no reason the Department of Agriculture needs to be in Washington, D.C. Why not in Omaha or Tulsa? There's no reason why the Department of Commerce needs to be in Washington, D.C. Surely it could be in Chicago or Seattle or somewhere else. You can go on and on and on. And I actually think having those people working in those agencies, not living in D.C., but living amongst the rest of us, the rest of the country, I think would actually be a good thing. It would diffuse a lot of that power, money, and influence. I actually like that idea from Senator Tim Scott. That was a good moment for him. Former Vice President Mike Pence is one of the only presidential candidates talking about not just our nation's spending problem, but our problem with long-term debt.
I mean, we have a debt today the size of our nation's economy for the first time since World War II. And more than 70% of all federal spending is in Social Security and Medicare. Now, Joe Biden's policy is insolvency. He won't even talk about common sense reforms for younger Americans of these long-term entitlement programs. And frankly, my former running mate's policy is identical to Joe Biden's. They won't even talk about it. I'd like to talk about how we reform these programs, introduce changes that'll preserve the program, that'll stave off a tidal wave of debt, and also give younger Americans what I call a better deal.
Interesting components there from the former vice president. I think those are things we have to get to. Those are honest conversations. I like the political courage to say, look, we have to have this conversation. If we don't, we're just kidding ourselves. Everything else is just window dressing. So as we always do on Friday, we take a look at kind of who's rising, who's falling, where things are. And today we're actually projecting forward because on Tuesday there will be that debate stage in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 8 people have qualified to be on that stage. We know that Francis Suarez was the last to qualify to be on that debate stage. We also know that former President Trump will not be on that debate stage. He has chosen not to participate, and so he will not be there, which I think will actually be really interesting. There'll be a real focus on policy and what needs to get done as opposed to just the back and forth and the battle of personalities rather than the ideas, the principles, and the policies. So as we watch that, we'll come in on Monday and Tuesday, and we'll just project forward in terms of what we expect to see. I'm keeping my eye on a couple of candidates rolling into this first debate that I think will be potentially the most surprising on the debate stage. One we just heard from, Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. As I mentioned, he has a little bit of momentum going right now. He is ascending in the polls. He's also getting the ground game going in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, which is his home state. I think Vivek Ramaswamy is also one to keep your eye on. I think he will do very well on the debate stage. To me, the question for him will be, can he have the discipline to stay on topic and not go too far afield going after the former president, defending and going after? I also think Doug Burgum is going to be an interesting one to watch. So we'll keep our eye on all of those. And this is what we do every Friday as we look at inside presidential politics. That rounds out hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for top of the hour news. Don't go anywhere, though. Our friend from the Washington Post, Megan McArdle, joins live in studio here. Stick around. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Southern Utah still cleaning up from heavy rain and flooding in some areas yesterday. Several homes in Cedar City flooded after police say a drainage system backed up. National Weather Service meteorologist Alex DeSmit says we could see round 2 today.
Really, no location today and tomorrow across southern Utah is out of the woods for heavy rainfall. It really could happen anywhere.
St. George looking at least a 70% chance of rain and thunderstorms through Tuesday. Flash flooding is probable in all of Utah's national parks, expected today in Zion, and could very well happen in the northern part of the state as well. Authorities have identified a 27-year-old man who was killed in an industrial accident in Clearfield on Wednesday. Police tell the Standard Examiner Ivan Marquez from Ogden was killed at a utility trailer in Clearfield after a piece of equipment fell on him. The State Labor Commission is investigating. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. People in Lahaina say they're still trying to come to grips with the wildfire on Maui that has claimed at least 111 lives and wiped out hundreds of homes. Kapali Keahi says it's going to take a long time to heal from this disaster.
We definitely need some time to think, to ponder upon, the next couple weeks and what we need to do to stay strong for the long haul.
The emergency services director from Maui County abruptly quit yesterday. Some residents have been critical of what they say is a slow and disorganized response to the disaster. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average bouncing up a few points, 27 points in positive territory as we approach the close of trading here. The NASDAQ, on the other hand, is down about 26 points. And our KSL weather, again, the prospect of heavy thunderstorms looking at both northern and southern Utah. That's next. KSL News Time 2:02.
This summer, the political season heats up.
By August, it'll be time for debates. Can you believe it?
We're planning coverage of the real issues, the important stories that impact how we live.
Listen each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
With our roots in northern Utah, Holy Cross Hospital has a legacy of caring to help every person be whole and healthy. Find us at 5 Holy Cross Hospital locations and more than 45 clinics along the Wasatch Front. Learn more at holycrossutah.org.
At Holy Cross Hospital, we're honored to carry the legacy of our namesake and equally honored to care for northern Utah's vibrant communities. Find us at 5 Holy Cross Hospital locations and more than 45 clinics along the Wasatch Front. Learn more at holycrossutah.org.
At Fisher Investments, we do things differently, and other money managers don't understand why.
Because our way works great for us.
But it may not work for your clients. That's why Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, obligated to put clients first. It's the highest standard for a financial advisor.
So, what do you provide? Cookie-cutter portfolios like the rest of us?
No cookie-cutter portfolios here. Fisher Investments tailors portfolios to meet each client's goals and needs.
But you do sell investments that earn you high commissions, right? And make commissions when you make trades for your clients?
No, Fisher Investments doesn't sell any commission investment products, and we never earn commissions on trades.
So what's in it for you?
Fisher Investments fees are structured so we do better when our clients do better. When it comes to helping clients achieve a comfortable retirement, we're clearly different. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments, clearly different money management.
Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
So you'd like to start enjoying your home a little more without climbing the stairs or doing yard work. How about spacious living in a newly designed, planned community with access to activities like golf, pickleball, and even leisurely strolls on beautiful open trails? It's yours with Nilsson Homes. They've been building homes across the Wasatch Front for over 45 years. Now see their latest single-level living community in Davis and Weber County. Brand new, move-in ready homes in the heart of Davis and Weber County, offering all the things you want in low-maintenance, luxury, single-level living. Easy access to just about everything. And best of all, no more stairs, lawnmowers, or yard work. Nilsson Homes has thought of everything, and it's done for you. Take advantage of amazing financing or reverse mortgage options. Nilsson Homes, luxury, low-maintenance living. Visit nilssonhomes.com. That's Nilson homes.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's High Yield Savings Certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
Crash-free, delay-free on all the Valley freeways and main secondaries, but traveling between Summit and Wasatch counties, we do have construction delays again today, and this is both directions of Highway 40. Expect possible slowdowns anywhere between Kearns Boulevard, SR 248, and Jordanelle. Need tires? Don't buy them without the money-saving Burt Bundle from Burt Brothers Tire and Service. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we could see more thunderstorms across the state from north to south again this afternoon. Some could bring heavy rain and possible flash flooding. The storm chances continue through the weekend. Today's high 95 with highs in the lower 90s through Monday. And it's 90 degrees, partly cloudy right now at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the headlines, especially during political season, is politicians promising to do everything. But underneath that headline, is promising to do everything the best way to make sure you do nothing? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
We are thrilled to actually have live in studio today Megan McArdle, one of our favorite thinkers and writers from the Washington Post. And Megan, welcome to the Beehive State.
Thank you. I am just as thrilled to be here. More thrilled, really.
Well, we love following what you're watching, and you're one of those people who have this great ability to be quick to observe and to understand the nuance of what's going on in the nation. And that's a rare gift, and then your ability to articulate that in words and just powerful phrases is something we always look to. It's one of our crucial inside sources and resources here on the show. And I want to get to something I know you have been not just thinking about, you've been noodling heavy on this for a bit, and that's this whole idea of abundance and how it plays out, particularly in our politics and trying to get things done.
Yeah, I think there's always been this fight between the right and the left over were we going to try to have more to be more prosperous, or were we going to try to redistribute what we had. And I think now what you're actually seeing is that some people on the left are kind of coming to the realization that if they want, there's a bunch of stuff they want to do, right? They want green energy, they want more housing, they want all of these things, they want more opportunity for people who are starved of it, and that requires building things. And that if you look at a state like California, what New York Times columnist Ezra Klein calls everything bagel liberalism, where you have to do every single thing and every single project, is actually making it impossible to build anything. And so unfortunately, I think at the same time you have seen the rise of MAGA conservatives who they talk about things like deregulation, but what they actually focus their energies on, if you're looking at the Republican primary right now, it's culture war stuff. It's not making there more so that we are healthier and have more prosperous lives and more opportunity for ourselves and our children. It's about, who has status, who is respected, and I'm going to make sure it's me. I don't want to totally discount that. I understand that. I actually am sympathetic with some of their grievances, but I think it is unfortunate that it's kind of taking the eyes off the ball of the baseline problem of how do we generate enough and more prosperity and more abundance for everyone.
Yeah, and let's unpack that a little bit. So let's look at it from the left. You talk about something within the Green New Deal or Green Energy Plan or something. Give us an example of how that too big prevents anything from actually getting done.
I mean, I think you see things like prevailing wage laws. You see things like the deal that Joe Biden, the Biden administration did to bring semiconductors to Arizona, and suddenly it's got a childcare. It's got you have to have daycare subsidies as part of this. Well, it's not that daycare is not a good thing for people. It's very necessary for people to have somewhere that they can care for their kids as they go out to earn money for their families. But that said, putting that on, if you're raising the cost of the product, and we're already trying to compete with Taiwan and with our semiconductor, maybe you could have put that to the side. But no, every single requirement has to be piled onto each project to the point where the projects then don't really work as projects to do the thing, the important priority, like building semiconductor capacity, the core of our modern economy in the United States, especially as a hedge against the event that China invades Taiwan. We need that capacity, and you can't do every good thing in every project.
Yeah, that desire to do everything often prevents you from doing anything.
Exactly.
And we've seen that, and you and I were talking about this for something that will air on Sunday, on the Sunday edition on KSL TV, talking about in the context of something like immigration.
Yeah.
Like if you try to do every single component of it, you end up with nothing, and then it usually ends up back into culture war point.
Exactly. And I think, most Americans are sympathetic to immigrants. They understand people are coming here to build a better life for their family. What's more American than that? All of our ancestors did it, unless we're Native American. And so, but they don't like lawless immigration. They don't like the chaos at the border. They want the border secured. They also want to make it possible for people who do come here. I think, the process is Byzantine and insane. They want a more rational process. They also probably want to have conversations about what kinds of immigrants and how many. But I think those two baseline things is that there should be a rational process and that the border needs to be secure. We could do those separately. Instead, we try to tie it into a big package that has been languishing in Congress for like 2 decades at this point.
Yeah, and it seems like when we try to do everything, we end up, we often just refer to it as the fake fight and the false choice.
Yeah.
And to me, it's getting to the focus. Focus always precedes success, especially when you're doing legislation. But it's looking at those principles that rule of law and compassion are actually compatible principles.
Yes, you wouldn't
radical.
necessarily think so to hear the debate today, but that's absolutely true. And one of the things that I'm often arguing to both sides, depending on the controversy, is that rule of law is compassion. There's always the temptation at the moment, but I don't like this outcome, so I'm just going to take the rules. Well, that rule is protecting the people that you want to protect.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you don't have a process that everyone can agree is fair, you don't have anything. You just have people banging each other over the head to get what they want. And, we've already moved a little too far in that direction. Let's step back a bit.
Yeah, there's another way to approach this, to be sure. So how do we change that conversation from and obviously when people are running for office, it is the kitchen sink plus mentality that you have to throw in there. How do we change that dynamic? Because often I think that creates expectations that just aren't real, which then undercuts trust and builds cynicism, and it seems to be kind of a vicious cycle we're in.
No, I think that's really true. The tendency for American politics is to overpromise and underdeliver, and it would be much better if it were the other way around, not just, I think, for Americans, but for the politicians in the long term. Because if you look at the level of trust in Congress, even moving down to state houses, there's more, thankfully, but not enough as much as there should be. Part of that is because people just assume that when a politician's lips moving, they're lying.
Yeah.
And it's the politicians are not just venal liars who care about nothing but getting elected. They really want to believe their own hype. The best salespeople always do. But, someone should reel this back towards a more realistic expectation for government, because we're, I think, again, simultaneously over-expecting.
Yeah.
We expect way more than government can possibly deliver. And then, when we don't get it, we say, oh, well, they're idiots. They can't do anything. And neither of those things are true.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're just joining us, we have Washington Post columnist Megan McArdle actually in the Beehive State in the studio today. We're thrilled to have that. We're going to stay with the conversation just a little bit longer, so stick around. We'll be right back. More on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Soon, this hot summer will give way to shorter days, beautiful colors, sunshine that seems a little dimmer. And before we know it, we're back to school shopping and cheering for our favorite football team. As the season changes, so will the news and weather. And we'll be here to cover it all. Plus, BYU sports coverage and traffic updates to get you to the game on time. KSL News Radio, your year-round companion for news.
Do you know why more homeowners choose Any Hour Services for help when it's time to replace their air conditioners? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and the main reasons people choose Any Hour Services is because of our people, processes, and convenience. People tell us all the time that there's just something different about having an Any Hour Services technician in their home. That's why most of our over 18,000 Google reviews mention our technicians by name. Another reason is our 7-step install process that we call the Any Hour Difference. It all starts with the needs analysis, where you explain what you like and dislike about your current system. This helps us design and size a system that fits your comfort and efficiency preferences as well as your home's airflow requirements. As for convenience, most of our installs are completed in one day. We also have flexible, no money down financing options available. even if you've been told no in the past. So if you've been thinking about getting a new air conditioner, call Any Hour Services and schedule a free estimate today. Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Every day you breathe in thousands of tiny little germs, allergens, and viruses. Don't let these invisible invaders make breathing through your nose impossible. Flush them out with Navage. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage to make cleaning your nose easy. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, helping flush out everything that makes you miserable. Nearly 4 million people use Navage to breathe better, snore less, and feel healthier. People like Dan, a verified Navage user who writes, I've had trouble with my sinuses for decades. I always thought something like this was a gimmick, but one use and I'm hooked. I should have bought this a long time ago. The results are immediate and incredible." Unquote. If you suffer from sinus congestion, allergies, or snoring, then Navage is the safe, drug-free solution you've been looking for. Navage is at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Target, and Navage.com. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E. Clean nose, healthy life.
Troy, I'm depressed. Bitches RV and American Fork is killing it.
What's depressing about that?
Stewart's RV managers and staff are still here, so we've got the same incredible customer service.
That's good.
And we brought in new RV brands like Ember RV and GoPlay Travel Trailers.
Also good.
And now you can shop hundreds more RVs at bitches.com.
Still waiting for the sad part.
I'm used to being a mentor, but I'm turning into a manatee.
You do have the same shape. Bish's RV is now open in American Fork. Come see us at the previous Stewart's RV or at our North Salt Lake location. Bish's RV, where memories begin.
If this were a Reese's TV ad, you'd be staring at a Reese's peanut butter cup. And sure, my voice is peanut buttery smooth, but still, you need to see the peanut butter cups, right? No? I can really just say Reese's and you'll go get some? Okay. Reese's. 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 Really working, actually. Reese's. Reese's. I'm on to something. Reese's. Reese's. Reese's.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Email from school about the incident today.
Scary.
You know, teachers like me, parents, we don't always know as much as you guys do about what's going on with other kids.
Half the time, it's rumors.
Yeah, but if you're ever concerned about a friend who's having trouble with alcohol, prescription drugs, anything, you need to tell an adult, someone you know and trust. That can be hard, but speaking up about a problem is what helping a friend is all about.
For more information, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Jeff Kaplan's Minute of News. We're committed to letting you know exactly what's going on. On our show, we're going to bring you up to speed on what's happening in the world to this moment. At the same time, the news can be really burdensome. It can leave you feeling a little bit depressed and even a little bit more depressed. My Minute of News is just a moment to lift you up. I'm blessed that KSL has given me the freedom to talk about whatever I want. Literally, it is my minute of news. Sometimes it's pegged to what's happening that very day. Sometimes it might be something bizarre that you didn't know happening somewhere else in the world. To make you smile for a moment, even on a difficult day, and make you realize the world is still spinning. I am so honored that so many people have appreciated and enjoy the Minute of News every afternoon.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this afternoon, I'm Dan Bomas. First, parts of southern Utah still cleaning up after yesterday's flash flooding. There's a good chance we'll see more this afternoon. Second, the man who died in an industrial accident in Clearfield yesterday has been identified. Third, residents of Lahaina say it's going to take a long time to heal from the wildfire that destroyed their town and killed more than 100 people. Right now, 90 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
We're going to stay with the conversation just a little bit longer. Of course, as Einstein said, it's not that he was any smarter than anyone. He was just willing to stay with the question a little bit longer. And one of our favorite people who always stays with the question a little longer is Megan McArdle, columnist for the Washington Post. And Megan, I want to get to a couple of things. You've been here in the Beehive State for a week now. Share with us something that has jumped out at you during your stay in Utah this time around.
I think it is, for me, it's the fact that everyone here is really invested in their institutions. And this is such a nice thing to see, is that there is a sense that, it's not that Utah doesn't do politics. I'm not some naive person who's like, oh, well, everything's perfect here. I don't think that. But I do think that when I watch Utahns, I've never said that word. Is that the correct way to say it?
You did it right.
Okay.
You got it right. You're official now. You're in.
Okay. Buying a beehive on my way home. When I watch Utahns deal with each other, they, when you talk to left, when you talk to right, there is a common sense that like our institutions belong to all of us and we all have a real investment in making them work. I think, you see there's a real difference in how Utah approaches social services, where there is this real emphasis on reliance, working alongside other things. There's this willingness to experiment. And I came here yesterday. I was visiting something we talked about on the Sunday show. I was visiting the Other Side Village, which is a new project to provide permanent tiny houses for the chronically homeless. And, this is a program that Utah was a pioneer in something called Housing First, which was the idea that we just get homeless into homes and then we try to deal with the other stuff, because if they're not housed, we can't really address any of the rest of it. And this is looking at that, and people there are still saying, no, Housing First is good, but what's the next step? Yeah. How do we move people beyond that? Because so many people get stuck right in that, I have a home, I'm kind of stable, but I'm still vulnerable because if I lose my supportive housing, if I get a job, I lose my supportive housing, then I lose my job, I'm right back into the cycle. How do you get people to a more permanent, stable place where they can think about, am I doing entrepreneurship? Am I, doing volunteer service? What am I doing? How am I participating in a real community? That's the kind of stuff that you see here, and I wish I saw it in more other places.
Yeah. You wrote a piece not too long ago in the Washington Post talking about democracy in America and where we are, and we always share that we can be pretty pessimistic about some of the politicians and a lot of the politics today, but the fact that we're still really bullish on the future of the country, I always say it's because of the neighborhood I live in, is why I have great confidence in the future of the country. Give us your perspective as you look out across the country.
I look at the way Americans deal with each other in real life when they are, not screaming at each other online, not at a political rally. One of my favorite stories, I was at a Trump rally and they were literally chanting, lock them up, about the media. And at the same time, I was stranded outside the media pen, which Trump likes to put in the center of his rallies so you can yell at them more efficiently. And I'm trying to make my way through this crowd, and the crowd is like going, lock them up. And then they're like, honey, she's got to get back to the prep. Move it. She's got to get out of the way. And they were all really nice to me. Like, I'm wearing my press badge and I got dehydrated because it's Arizona. It's 98 degrees. I don't know what I'm doing because I'm from the East. And people are giving me water, and that is, I think, actually a metaphor for everything, right? Is that we scream at each other in theory, but in practice, we love each other. We treat each other decently. We're the number of people who don't treat other Americans decently is really, really small, and I don't care where you go. I don't care. It's the worst neighborhood, the highest crime neighborhood. Most of the people in that neighborhood are being good neighbors and good people to each other. And we just have to hold on to that. There's a line that I think is from Chesterton, but I've never been able to find it. But he said that, people, critics of 19th century literature looked at it and said there are no sewers, and this is not realistic. It's sort of a fantasy. And the mistake that those people made was to conclude that if having no sewers was unrealistic, that realism was sewers. And in fact, yes, that's one part of it, but it's actually a really small part of what goes on, and most of what goes on is above and better than that. And that's the part that unfortunately, I think we've gotten into the mindset of focusing on the sewers rather than everything we have built above them.
Yeah. You actually had in your piece in the Washington Post an example from back in the 1930s. Someone who had traveled the country at a time when Chinese, Asian Americans were very looked down on. Just share that perspective.
This
I
is
love
one
that.
of my favorite stories. This is a sociologist, and he goes basically on the road with one of his grad students who is Chinese and his Chinese wife. And they are going everywhere, and they don't write ahead because they're afraid to hear no. So they just show up, and they're like, will you serve us? Well, out of the hundreds of restaurants and hotels that they attempted, one restaurant refused to serve them. Every other place took them in. And so he then goes back, and he writes letters to all of these places and says, will you serve Chinese people? And almost all of them said no. And the reason, I mean, look, that's a terrible story on one level, right?
Yeah.
It is that these people were willing to profess terrible bigotry against Chinese Americans. But on the other level, it's actually, it makes me happy because we are accustomed to the idea that people are hypocrites about race in a bad direction, right? That they profess that they care about racial equality and then they choose segregated neighborhoods and schools. But people, it goes the other way. We are often say things that are worse than we will really behave in person. And I think we have to hold on to that. And I also think I'm a little encouraged by, I think people are getting tired of the rage.
Yeah.
I just sense, like, what was the point of spending the last 10 years screaming at each other? And people just saying, you know, I'm just going to go find something to do. I'm going to go find some people to talk to about something that's positive and not negative. And so I think actually, one hope I have for America among the many great things about this country is that I think we're inching ourselves back towards a healthier way of thinking about each other, about our own lives, and about our future.
Yeah. Well, as always, I want to know what's on your mind, what's on your radar as you look out across what you're reading, what you're thinking about. What are some of the things on the horizon that are probably under the radar for most people, but things that I know you're getting ready for?
I mean, I'm thinking about a lot of over the radar stuff, like what is happening with AI, what is going to happen with biomedical innovation, what is going to happen with the 2024 election. I mean, I think that one of the things that is the biggest kind of undiscussed crisis is the learning loss. And I know Utah did not have this problem as much as a lot of the blue states that kept schools closed longer. But I think the learning loss has been catastrophic. It's been a real crisis. And I don't feel like we are anywhere close to, this is a national emergency, and we should be treating it like a national emergency. And we just aren't. No one's really talking about, do we just cancel summer vacation for a year? Do we have a year where school is 2 hours longer? Do we do something intensive to get kids back to where they need to be to graduate on time, be productive members of society? Because every lesson plan we have, everything, it's all based on the idea that you mastered the last thing that happened. Right. And if kids are coming, Robert Pondisio, is an education reporter, said he's hearing shocking numbers of accounts of 3rd, 4th, 5th graders who basically can't read or spell or even know the alphabet. And that those kids, we need to be doing targeted intensive interventions, and we're just not. So I think that is a thing that I'm thinking a lot about, and I think I'm disappointed to see how few other people are.
Yeah, it's one of those conversations that we just absolutely have to get to. Give us one last thing before we let you sneak off and back out of the state. Give us something that we ought to be thinking about. What?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, a lot of things. I think, look, something that I'm looking at is what you guys are doing with social media. I think we got to be thinking about how we're teaching kids to handle social media, how early we're exposing them to social media, and I think it's a really difficult collective action problem, right? Yeah. I know I'm not a parent, but I know from talking to all my friends who are that you feel like you can't deny your kid this because then they're going to be the weird loser who no one talks to. And so I think that this is something that we should be talking about. I mean, thinking about certainly for ourselves, but also really thinking more broadly for other people is how as a community are we going to resolve this question? Because I think it is going to have to ultimately be resolved at the community level.
Yeah. Great perspective, great insight as always. Megan McArdle from the Washington Post. Always appreciate your thinking, your writing, and it's been great to have you in the state this week.
Thanks for having me, and it's been great to be here. Thank you to all Utahns listening to this. It was a wonderful experience.
Oh, it's good to have Megan McArdle in the state. And if you want to see more of my conversation with Megan McArdle, you can see that on Sunday Edition on KSL TV. Airs at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning in between Meet the Press and Music and the Spoken Word. Had a great conversation. We extended into a few other areas. And so, again, you can check that out on our friends at KSL TV at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, Sunday Edition. And we'll go ahead and step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news here. We all know that gratitude's a valuable virtue to have, but can gratitude actually change your brain for the better? We'll talk about that coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top story this hour, the Utah Department of Transportation making some changes in Logan Canyon to try and stop semi-trucks from crashing into Garden City. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobe reports.
It's become almost a regular occurrence in Little Garden City for large semis to lose their brakes and come barreling down the highway. But UDOT is already working on a mandatory brake check, and today they approved a new project to widen the road leading up to that runaway truck ramp they built just last year. They hope that'll give trucks more room to get off the road in time to use that ramp if they need.
2 people were injured earlier this summer when a semi lost its brakes and crashed through some garages in Garden City. The Andean condor that has lived at the Tracy Aviary for generations has died. Aviary managers say Andy passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 67 years old. Andy came to Utah from San Diego Zoo in 1960. In recent years, he was allowed to wander around the aviary grounds where visitors could get a close-up look. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. During his joint press conference at Camp David this afternoon, President Joe Biden confirmed his administration is carefully tracking the path of Hurricane Hillary. That's expected to become the first tropical storm to strike California in more than 90 years. Biden says FEMA is currently mobilizing for possible responses, says residents should take the steps they need to be safe from the storm.
I urge everyone in the path of this storm to take precautions and listen to the guidance from state and local officials.
The president hosted the leaders of Japan and South Korea for a 3-way summit at Camp David. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing the trading day up 25 points. The NASDAQ, on the other hand, was down 26 points. The S&P 500 down less than 1 point. And our KSL weather, we could see some more thunder showers this afternoon. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
Early mornings can be hard enough, just getting yourself going.
We try to make it a little easier with news and weather from comfortable, trusted anchors and reporters.
Join us on Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9
on KSL News Radio.
Imagine how inconvenient your life would be without power. No lights, no refrigeration, no heating or cooling, and no electronics. But with a Generac home standby generator, you'll have the power when you need it most. Generac generators automatically provide backup after sensing a power outage, so your life goes on uninterrupted. Schedule a free quote today with Genco Generators, your elite Generac service dealer in Utah. Call 801-296-5922 or online at gencogenerators.net.
Introducing Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. Whether it's a small clog or a larger mainline sewer drain issue, the experienced technicians at Yes are ready to solve all of your drain problems. Take advantage of our 83 or It's Free mainline drain clearing special. Feel secure knowing the trusted professionals at Yes guarantee that if we can't clear it, you don't pay for it. Visit theyesmancan.com for details, terms, and conditions.
If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. Even though that's an old adage, it's still very true today. And it's especially true of your old 401k. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, asking you to get that old 401k in sight and out of the company you no longer work for. But don't roll it into your new 401k. That could be one of the worst things you do. Of course that's easy. But when has the easiest way ever been the best way? Instead, call Trajan Wealth and learn about all of your options, including a way to earn an upfront bonus of up to 25% for your future income just for rolling it over. That's right. You could earn up to a 25% bonus for your retirement income just for rolling that 401k over with Trajan Wealth. Don't roll that 401k into your new company plan. Don't do it without calling Trajan Wealth first. Call 801-899-7600 or visit TrajanWealth.com.
Guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
We do have an accident in Midvale. It's on the exit ramp from southbound I-15 at 7200 South, but it is out of traffic on the shoulder, so no delay. In fact, all of your Valley freeways seeing a delay-free drive at this time. UDOT traffic alert. Plan ahead for nighttime lane closures on I-15 in Utah County. Crews are upgrading the lane lines on I-15 between Lehigh and Payson up to 6 nights a week through September. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we could see some more thunderstorms across the state from north to south again today. Some could bring heavy rain and possible flash flooding. The storm chances continue through the weekend. Today's high 95, highs in the lower 90s through Monday. Right now, 90 degrees and partly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
We've all had the lessons about gratitude, and those are often, of course, delivered to us by our parents and teachers and grandparents and so on. Gratitude's an interesting and a powerful practice that can help people gain new perspectives, live better lives. And to me, the interesting thing is gratitude is something to look at a little bit differently. This is kind of a think again moment. A lot of people think of gratitude and they think, okay, here goes a conversation about the glass being half full or half empty or rose colored. That's not what it's really about. And someone who's taken a deep dive look at that, Kim Cameron, William Russell Kelly Professor of Management and Organizations at the University of Michigan. Great piece at Deseret.com. And Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be invited. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so let's dive on into this. Let's talk about gratitude, and we will avoid all of those who have already rolled their eyes and said, "Oh, here we go, Pollyanna all over." You've taken a harder look at it. Give us some of the behind the headline of all of that.
Well, it's really true. That is, gratitude is often, what did you say? Thank you for somebody giving you something. Turns out that there's one survey that suggests 10% of employees express gratitude to somebody every day, and 60% never express gratitude to anybody at all, which is not unusual because, you get on an airplane and ask how many people thank the flight attendant, or in a restaurant, how many people thank the server. So it's not practiced nearly as much as it should. But the reason that it's so important is not only that, we should be nice and we should thank folks. President Nelson gave a wonderful address during the pandemic about, gratitude matters a lot.
Yeah.
But from a scientific point of view, it matters a lot. Here's some examples of that. So, for example, in my class at University of Michigan, the students are required to keep a journal, to write in their journal every day. Half of those people, however, are assigned to write 3 things for which they're grateful, or 5 minutes before they go to bed tonight, the best things that happened to them during the day. The other half of these students simply keep a journal, the issues they faced, the interactions they had, the problems they solved, or whatever. Then, at the end of the semester, you give students a set of tests. One, for example, is you give all the students a flu shot. 7 days later, those keeping a gratitude journal are healthier. That is, there's significant degree more antibodies in their system than the first group. You give them a creativity task. What's that? Well, think of all the things you can use a brick for, or a ping pong ball or something. Those keeping a gratitude journal have a broader variety of ideas and simply more numerous ideas. That is mental flexibility. You give them a mental acuity task. That is, memorize information or remember information or come up with sophisticated decision rules for complex data. Those keeping a gratitude journal are a higher level of performance mentally, cognitively, than the other group. So it redounds to your own benefit. There's a wonderful study of heart disease patients, excuse me, been replicated several times. In this particular study, half of the heart disease patients were assigned to keep a gratitude journal every day for 8 weeks. The other half of these people did not keep a gratitude journal. Then 8 weeks later, they simply measured heart health. Those keeping a gratitude journal had not only not deteriorated, unlike the other group, but their hearts had actually healed to a significant degree more in just 8 weeks. Now, there are many others. Those are just examples of studies done about the impact of gratitude on simply one's life. I got to tell you one more story. Another study done of individuals who were all diagnosed with clinical depression, significant depression. All of them put into therapy. Half of these people, however, were assigned to write a gratitude letter to someone each week for 3 weeks. Then 6 months later, they simply measured the extent to which these people were still suffering from clinical depression. Turns out those who wrote the gratitude journal were healthier, and in fact, they were healthier than the other group that just continued to have therapy. In other words, gratitude letters were a more significant intervention than was the therapy. All right, all of that to say, there are many studies, of course, but all of that is to simply say that human beings, as it turns out, are inherently inclined toward being positive, being virtuous, being grateful, being compassionate, and so on. So this article for the Deseret News simply says, you know what? It's an important intervention to help people change their perspective in their lives.
Yeah, so important. And I want to get one last thing before I let you go, before we have to go to a break. And that is, you talk about it in the context of it is the practice of gratitude. There is a gratitude muscle that needs to be developed. It's not just something we do a one-off, but there's a practice to it. Give us a couple of just really quick hits in terms of how we can better practice gratitude.
Well, great suggestion. There are several easy practices. One is keep a gratitude journal. Let your children keep a gratitude journal. I know some companies, by the way, with 10,000 employees, every employee is given a gratitude journal. Changes things a lot. That's one. Another is simply identify people for whom you've been served, to whom you should be grateful. Let them know. Write a note. The CEO of LG, the Korean conglomerate, every day he writes 5 thank you notes to somebody in his organization. I saw him a couple of years ago. I asked him if he's still doing that practice. He said, absolutely. It's changed my whole organization. So another is simply recognize people. Another is people to whom you're close, that is, have close relationships, children, friends, spouses. Just express gratitude. I mean, listen, this is not rocket science. You know, it's a very small, easily implemented practice, and it changes. It changes heart rhythms, changes brain waves, it changes performance, it changes all kinds of things.
Wow, fantastic stuff. Great insight. Kim Cameron's the William Russell Kelly Professor of Management and Organizations at the University of Michigan. Great piece at Deseret.com. And Kim, thanks so much for joining us. A great perspective, great thing for all of us to be thinking about as we roll into the weekend. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for the chance. Thanks very much for the chance.
You bet. And gratitude is one of those things that we have to get at in a lot of different ways. We'll talk about it a little bit more when we come back after the break. We'll go ahead and step aside and come back with some final thoughts here on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
With the economy the way it is, you're probably staying put. So invest in your home, your number one asset, with beautiful custom replacement windows from Advanced Window Products. They're a local Utah company building beautiful vinyl framed and insulated double pane windows for 37 years right here in Salt Lake City. Advanced Window Products will save you money on your energy bill. Get security features to keep your family safe. And at Advanced Window Products, it's all custom. And the best part? They're local. They build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. So there's no middleman markup. You save on the highest quality windows in Utah. Plus, Rocky Mountain and Dominion offer rebates. For a limited time, they offer 60-month 0% financing. And right now, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more. They're working 8 weeks out. So make the call now. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
Just a little heads up before something bad happens.
Move your coffee cup away from your computer.
Oh, no.
So you can have more control.
Stop. You're texting your boss by mistake.
Uh-oh. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Warning. The cap is loose on that ketchup.
Ugh. Don't wait. You have the power to change the outcome. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
Yeah, I'm so stressed. Our business is growing. We've got people all over now.
Ooma.
What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending the Ooma cloud phone system with auto attendant and more than 50 features.
Ooma?
Yep. Switching to Ooma is a cinch. Just $24.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Find small business calm at ooma.com/radio. That's OOMA.com/radio.
The extracurricular activities, the traffic, the nightly homework, the traffic, the finding time to eat dinner together as a family, the traffic. Back to school can be stressful. Thanks to Ziploc, meal prep doesn't have to be. New Ziploc bags with Stay Open design have a patented stand-up bottom that helps keep the bag upright and a top crease that folds and holds for easy filling, unlocking a second set of hands in the kitchen. If only it unlocked a second set of lanes. New Ziploc brand freezer and storage bags with Stay Open design from S.C. Johnson, a family company.
At Shane Company, we believe everybody is made to shine. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. Your moments, your milestones, your love story all deserve to shine bright. You don't need an occasion. You and your life are the event. So put on earrings that make you sparkle, diamonds that light up the room, an heirloom you'll treasure for years to come. We're all made to shine. Shane Company, fine jewelry since 1929. Any Hour Services can make sure your AC keeps you cool this summer. Whether you need a tune-up, repair, or just a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. Opening a My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal record and interactive tools tailored for you. You can see if you are eligible to receive benefits, view spousal benefit estimates, and compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates when you want to start receiving benefits. Already receiving benefits? Use your account to change your address, set up or change direct deposit, get a proof of income letter, and more. In most states, you can also request a replacement Social Security card. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Dave and Dujanovic.
I hope our listeners take away lots of information, but also a new way of looking at a topic.
Ideas, their thoughts, the things they thought they knew. I hope that gets challenged when they listen to us.
I've had listeners stop me at the grocery store and ask me, what is your show about? And I'll tell them our show is anything from politics to your pocketbook.
Listen for Dave and Dujanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, UDOT is taking more steps to prevent big trucks from crashing into buildings in Garden City as they come down the hill toward Bear Lake. Second, Andy, the Andean condor who greeted visitors to Tracy Aviary for generations, has died at the age of 67. Third, President Biden is among those watching as Hurricane Hillary approaches the Southern California coast. Right now, we're at 90 degrees under partly cloudy skies in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. And as we round out the program today, I want to end up on a couple of things I think were really significant today. One, I want to come back to our conversation we just had about gratitude. We'll round out with that in just a second. But before we get to that, I want to go back to where we began the show today, which was talking about the historic summit being held by President Biden and, of course, the President of South Korea, President Yoon, and Prime Minister Kishida from Japan. This was historic at Camp David, and it really represents a very long, far away from the public, far away from announcements and microphones and cameras, kind of conversation that the Biden administration has been having with these two countries that are critical allies, especially as you look at the rise of China and you look at all that's going on in North Korea. And these are critical to the United States, to our own national security, and to our economics, for that matter. And Japan and South Korea have not had a harmonious relationship for a very long time. And so the fact that President Biden was able to make this all happen says a lot. This is a victory. And again, it's time to put the politics on the shelf for a minute. I don't care if you love the president, don't like the president, where you fall on the spectrum. This is good for the country. It's good for peace in the region and around the world. And so everyone should just applaud that. That's a good thing. It's a good day. And to have this at Camp David, I thought was a pretty amazing and wonderful setting for it. So let's pick up just a little bit. President Biden announced something that I was kind of surprised to hear during the press conference. You sort of expected a lot around, joint operations and military drill practices and conversations, those kinds of things. But President Biden also said that these 3 countries, the United States, South Korea, and Japan, are committed to joint cancer research and collaboration between the national laboratories of these countries.
Our partnership is about building a better future for our people. That's why we're deepening our cooperation on global health and launching a trilateral expert exchange in support of the U.S. Cancer Moonshot Initiative. That's going to, I believe, change cancer as we know it. It matters a great deal to me and to families all across our 3 countries. We're also launching a new collaboration between our national laboratories and advance our science knowledge and technological capabilities together. As we do, we'll work in lockstep to set the standards for safe, secure, and trustworthy emerging technology, including artificial intelligence.
So important. I think that was a great moment for the president, that we could have a conversation around cancer research, national laboratories working together, sharing research and information. That's good for everybody. And so that's just a good thing. We applaud the president for that one today. The president also emphasized the meaning behind Camp David and that this really has a great symbol in terms of being a place of new beginnings.
This is the first summit I've hosted at Camp David as president. I can think of no more fitting location to begin our next era of cooperation. A place that has long symbolized the power of new beginnings and new possibilities. In the months and years ahead, we're going to continue to seize those possibilities together, unwavering in our unity and unmatched in our resolve. This is not about a day, a week, or a month. This is about decades and decades of relationships that we're building.
So a day of new beginning there at Camp David between the three nations. I think that was also important. And then, as I mentioned at the outset, this was not an easy lift to get particularly Korea and Japan onto the same stage, onto the same platform, into the same space at Camp David to have these conversations. There's a lot of tensions there, and there's a lot of political undercurrents to all of this that are really important to take a look at. And President Biden, in his comments at the end of this meeting, as they took questions from the media, applauded both the Korean leader and the Japanese leader for their political courage to put the past behind them and to look towards that new future.
And so I want to recognize the important work that both of you have done and the political courage, and I mean this sincerely, the political courage that you both demonstrated to resolve difficult issues that have stood in the way for a long time of a close relationship between Japan and Korea and with the United States.
Mr. Yoon, in particular from South Korea, took a lot of heat politically back in South Korea for entertaining and engaging in these conversations with Japan. Again, they have been bitter rivals. There's a lot of history in terms of human rights between the two countries. A lot of things in the past that were just not pleasant, and many who haven't been willing to forgive and to move forward in the relationship. And so I thought that President Biden commended both leaders to show the political courage to start building this. This was something else that Phelim Kine from Politico shared with us at the top of the show that is, again, beyond the headline kind of moment. And he talked about the way that they're structuring some of these interactions, everything from the military component to economics to research around cancer, that all of these were designed to create an infrastructure, so to speak, a support system that would keep this connection, this alliance between the United States, South Korea, and Japan stable and forward-moving regardless of who was in office in any of the three countries. Sadly, in a lot of these kinds of agreements over the last decade in particular, when one party moves out of power in one country, things can unravel rather quickly. Or agreements between three nations can sort of get put on the back burner or on the shelf or taken off the table entirely just because a different administration comes into power. And so part of, I think, the importance of this Camp David meeting was the fact that the way the administration has structured this is it should be sustaining regardless of who's in the Oval Office in the White House or who leads South Korea or who leads Japan in not the months ahead, not the years ahead, but the decades ahead. I think that's something worth celebrating. And I think that is something to bring it full circle to our last segment, talking about gratitude. We can be grateful for these kinds of moments in the world today. We don't talk about them nearly enough when we have real progress. And this is not an overnight thing with Korea, Japan, and the United States, but it's an important one. And we should be grateful because it makes the world a little safer. It makes the opportunity for freedom a little greater, and it makes a difference for all of us. And so as we talked in our last segment with Kim Cameron from the University of Michigan, gratitude is a thing. It impacts your brain. It impacts your interaction with others. And it's not just being Pollyanna. It's not just looking for the good. It actually makes a difference for all of that. I always go back to William George Jordan, who actually said the reverse of this. Ingratitude is the most popular sin of humanity. It's forgetfulness of the heart. The individual who possesses ingratitude finds it the shortest cut to all the other vices. So we can't allow ingratitude to justify or become the shortcut to anger and greed and bitterness and jealousy, short-sightedness. Gratitude is the answer. It's part of the path to move everything forward. Well, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. Thank you for joining us. I am Boyd Matheson. And as always, as you go out into the world today, be grateful, see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.